Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Jim Harbaugh headed back to Ann Arbor. The Michigan head coach will be returning to campus next season. Interviewed with the Vikings today, but ultimately decided to remain as Wolverines head coach. Led Michigan to its first ever playoff appearance this past season. Won the Big Ten East. Arguably won his biggest game at Michigan, beating Ohio State finally. Harbaugh also has a top 10 recruiting class coming into the program after today's National Signing Day. Let's welcome in big game Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports college football writer and analyst here on HQ. Dennis, what more can you tell us as Jim Harbaugh is returning to Ann Arbor? He is not headed to coach for the Minnesota Vikings.
Not surprised at all, Hakeem. Everything I've said here on HQ, everything I've written for the site, every interview I've done on radio, I've ended it by saying Jim Harbaugh could stay at Michigan the rest of his life. You know, that's what we're talking about. You know, we're talking about a guy who makes decisions on sometimes the spur of the moment. I'm sure this was thought out before that. But, you know, a guy who, you know, got all those, turned the game on its ear 7 years ago with all those satellite camps. A guy who survived this long, took a pay cut, was fine with that. And like you mentioned, coming back with a top 10 class. And no one at Michigan even seemed to blink that he was conducting this interview on National Signing Day. That's why everybody thought this was a done deal. If he was going to throw it in the face of Michigan on the day they were signing players, who was going to conduct the press conference to announce the class? But he is coming back. They do have a good team coming back. J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback. Cade McNamara, the quarterback. Blake Corum, back from the foot injury. They're going to lose Aiden Hutchinson, obviously. But this does give Michigan some longevity. You know, it's not going to be easy to beat Ohio State. It's going to be even harder to get to the playoff. I think we know how far away Michigan is, judging by the Georgia game. But he stayed loyal to his school. And this isn't going to be the first time, nor was it the last, that he got got interest from NFL teams. He was getting it every year per sources I was talking to today.
What do you think ultimately led him back to Ann Arbor?
It could be the fact that the Vikings weren't going to choose him. It could have been a last-second change of heart that tugged at his heartstrings and he wanted to go back to Michigan. I'm sure we'll find that out in the subsequent hours or days. But if you go down this far down the line with an NFL team you're at the interview process, and frankly, if you're Jim Harbaugh, I don't know if you even have to interview. It's more of a meeting about philosophy and schemes and stuff like that. You know, I think you're down the line that the Vikings were very, very interviewed. I don't know what it is for now because it's Jim Harbaugh.
He just lost his defensive coordinator to his brother in Baltimore. Mike McDonald going to head the defense there for the Ravens as he becomes their new defensive coordinator. Who are a couple of names that you might think about in terms of being a good fit for Jim Harbaugh to take over the defense there in Ann Arbor?
As defensive coordinator in Ann Arbor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about that yet. I'm in full Jim Harbaugh replacement mode this week. I was writing up candidates for that. I think Josh Gaddis would have been a candidate to take over that job right away, the offensive coordinator who won the best assistant coach in the year award, the Broyles Award. Matt Rule, I was told today, would have walked to Ann Arbor, Michigan for that job. I'm sorry to leave you in a lurch, Hakeem. I don't have that information right now.
That's okay. We're right in the moment. I'm just curious who might end up coming over because maybe that was part of the deal, right? Maybe he said, hey, I'm going to go back to Michigan. I'm going to get to select my defensive coordinator now that Mike left and went to team up with my brother. Maybe there's something that's interconnected here. Maybe the deal wasn't good enough in Minnesota, or maybe he was just coming in just to maybe get some interest. But certainly him coming back to Michigan is monster news, especially considering the season the Wolverines just had, now being super competitive with Ohio State and being able to go toe-to-toe with them and see what happens here in the future. He'll be going into his 8th season there in Ann Arbor. But the big story here, Jim Harbaugh has told the Vikings he is going back to Ann Arbor to take over and remain as head coach of Michigan as he remains there. Look, this was his best season. 7 seasons in Ann Arbor, went 12-2, lost to Georgia in the semis, but the biggest win was over Ohio State, finally beating Ohio State for the first time in his career and winning the Big Ten East. Much more ahead here on Jim Harbaugh staying in Ann Arbor. Says, no thanks, NFL. I'm staying in college. I'm going to see what I can get done here with the program at Michigan. Coming up, Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli with their insight next on CBS Sports HQ. Surprise, I'm coming back. Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh will be returning to Ann Arbor next season. Harbaugh interviewed with the Vikings on Wednesday, National Signing Day, but ultimately decided to remain the Wolverines head coach, led Michigan to its first ever playoff appearance this past season. Harbaugh also has a top 10 recruiting class coming into the program after National Signing Day. He's coming back, and the people in Ann Arbor are joyous. They're celebratory. 7 seasons at Michigan. This past season, the most successful, beating Ohio State and clinching a spot in the college football playoff. All right, welcome in 2 of the 4 members of the Cover 3 podcast, host Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli. Chip, Jim Harbaugh returning to Michigan. Your reaction is what?
Number one, surprise. I thought that Jim Harbaugh would be the new head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. I thought that his relationship with the new general manager there, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, a man who he brought on to the San Francisco 49ers staff at the beginning of his NFL career, I thought this was going to be a reuniting situation. And the fact that he took the second interview on National Signing Day, and there were people within the program who were preparing as though there might be a new head coach in place. We'd already started writing these articles about who might replace Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there is a little bit of a rhythm to these coaching searches, especially when it is a college coach going to the NFL. And I just thought Harbaugh was gone. So number one, I would say is surprise. Number two, this is a massive win for college football because Jim Harbaugh was just starting to get his swag back. He had to get a little bit quiet after he ruffled some feathers with his sleepover recruiting visits and his satellite camps early in his Michigan career. But then we started to see with the Big Ten championship, with finally beating Ohio State, Harbaugh was starting to get some of that fun back on the mic. I mean, Ryan Day, you hit a triple. You think you hit a triple just because you were born on third base. I want that Jim Harbaugh in college football. So I do think it's good for college football to have Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And then number three, a massive win for Michigan because he said on the microphone after the loss to Georgia that he was not dismayed by the loss because he feels like this is the beginning of a new chapter of Michigan football, having finally broken through the first Big Ten championship since Lloyd Carr, getting to the college football playoff for the first time. So to say that it's a new chapter, then turn around about a month later and leave for the Minnesota Vikings, it's very disappointing for a Michigan fan. But instead, you've got a renewal of confidence that Jim Harbaugh is going to be there. And depending on how things go with the administration, restructuring the contract, he could be there for a long time.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chip. I'm shocked at this. Honestly, I had been for the last since the rumors first kind of started popping up of Harbaugh's NFL interest. I've been saying the entire time, he's not going to leave Michigan. It didn't make any sense for him to do what he did last year in restructuring his contract to come back for less money, have the best season of his time in Ann Arbor, and then say, okay, I'm going to the NFL. But then when the reports came that he was interviewing with the Minnesota Vikings for the second time on National Signing Day and flying to Minneapolis, I thought to myself, oh, wow, no, this has really happened. So I've spent the last 24 hours anticipating the announcement that Jim Harbaugh is leaving Michigan for Minnesota. So when the news broke tonight that he was returning to Michigan, I was caught completely off guard. I'm caught by surprise. But as you were saying, Chip, this is good for Michigan, and it's good for college football. It's good for Michigan in that Harbaugh has taken this program back to the place where he was trying to get it to begin with. He came back to a Michigan program that had been kind of in the doldrums for quite a while, slowly built it up. There was that kind of step back in 2020 during the pandemic season, but to win the Big Ten this year, to beat Ohio State, to get to the college football playoff, this was exactly what Harbaugh came back to Michigan to do. So that was part of the reason why I was surprised by the timing of it as well. But I think it's good for the sport in general to have Harbaugh and that personality back in the sport. And I think it's great for Michigan, and I think it's great for the Big Ten. And I just would prefer if maybe next time he was a little more forthright about it.
You know, I'm curious about the fact that maybe he didn't want to deal. Look, there are politics in college football. We know that. but maybe he didn't want to deal with the politics in the NFL. I'm curious about that. I know we're not going to get that answer anytime soon, but I really am curious because of the way things ended in San Francisco, the way things that are right now in the NFL. I'm wondering if this was a situation where Jim Harbaugh said, okay, I'm going to get some interest, right, Chip, from the Minnesota Vikings, from a very good football franchise. It says, I'm going to go get wined and dined, but maybe I parlay this into a lifetime contract with Michigan, which is really where I want to be because now I've put this program back on the map. They've always been on the map, but now they are back on the map.
See, here you are, Hakeem, applying all this sense and logic to the situation when we're dealing with Jim Harbaugh here. I mean, that's the thing that really stands out to me because there were reports from other websites, not our own, that indicated like this was a done deal. And the specifics of those reports said people within that program believe he's going to take the Vikings job. People around that building are preparing as though he's going to take the Vikings job. And that's what's always left Jim Harbaugh as truly unique within the space of football because you never know what he's actually thinking. We've never been able to totally get a grasp of everything that he's weighing. And I think that there probably are people around that Michigan football facility who thought, like we did, that he was as good as gone to the Minnesota Vikings. But the truth of the matter is we cannot apply our own sense. We cannot apply our own logic. We cannot project our own values onto Jim Harbaugh. This is just a one-of-a-kind coach and person within the football space. I think that he wasn't trying to get wined and dined. I think he was like, oh, this will be interesting. I will enjoy going through this experience. And he went through the experience and said, I choose Michigan. And just it is possible that this really did happen absent of all of these extra, conspiracies and layers. It's possible that they factored into his final calculation. But I do think that it's very true what's been told about Jim Harbaugh from long ago at his time at Michigan. You can look him right in the eye, and you could have no idea exactly what he's thinking about what you're saying.
Well, I remember in terms of his recruiting, right? Remember, we heard all the stories. He slept up in a tree house with a recruit to try to get him to come to Michigan. He had Rashawn Gary. He brought all these, big-time celebrities to National Signing Day and to get them up on stage. Like, he's always made such a show, with recruits. And then on National Signing Day, he becomes basically the story here by saying, I'm going to spurn you, Minnesota. I'm going back to Michigan. I'm going to be the head coach of the Wolverines. And, Tom, when you look at this is a massive win, not only for the program, but for the recruits coming in.
Yeah, this is, it's kind of lost in the sauce here because all the focus on Michigan today was on the fact that Jim Harbaugh was in Indianapolis interviewing for an NFL job, and nobody thought he was coming back. And it kind of overshadowed the fact that Michigan's got a top 10 recruiting class. You're seeing it right there on the recruiting rankings. They're number 9th in the 24/7 Sports Composite. It's the number 3 class in the Big Ten, but it's a very good class and the kind of class that they need to ensure that they can keep and maintain the momentum that they built this year going forward, competing in the Big Ten East or whatever the divisions look like in the future, depending on what Kevin Warren's talked about with possible changes in the Big Ten coming our way. But this is a program that is finally back at the level that it is supposed to be. But in order to maintain that level, you have to recruit at a certain, the blue chip ratio. Our friend Bud Elliott talks about it all the time, or at least half your recruits have to be 4 or 5 stars if you have any hope of winning a national championship. And Harbaugh, that was the kind of strange thing about this story. This is a class of 23 players, but 22 of them had signed in December. And that's part of the weird kind of game that the early signing period could play, and that Jim Harbaugh felt comfortable going to interview for another job on National Signing Day because the entire signing class was already locked in and inked for the next season. So maybe he didn't feel guilty about it, or maybe he wasn't in fear of losing any commitments on the last day because he had them all signed up. But it's just a crazy story. And Chip, going back to what you're saying about trying to figure out Jim Harbaugh, you're a musician. So there are some people that play on beat. There are some people who play off beat. And I don't know what beat Jim Harbaugh plays.
The beat of his own drum. That's
100%.
That's why the guy is such a wild card. As you know, I'm an Ohio State fan, but look, this is great for college football. When Jim Harbaugh comes back to Michigan, this is a good thing for the rivalry. This is a good thing for college football. Always a good time to talk it and break it down with Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli. And Jim Harbaugh, wow, making a splash on signing day. He's coming back. He has the 9th ranked recruiting class according to 24/7 Sports Composite. And you can hear much more about this on the Cover 3 podcast for all things college football. Check this out. Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli, Dan Cannell, Bud Elliott take you from National Signing Day to the National Championship with in-depth analysis. And, of course, throughout the season, you'll get picks against the spread. Loyal listeners will tell you it's one of the best podcasts on the market. The Cover 3 podcast, download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.